Hey friends, welcome back to our channel. It is Lori
and Michelle, and we're in the kitchen again.
Hey, we have something very exciting today. In today's video, we are going to be making the biscottis that Michelle and I eat pretty much every single day.
Yes, over on our Instagram, you guys see us eat them a lot with our morning coffee, and many of you guys have asked us to share how we make them, and so today we are doing that. Showing you guys how we make these biscottis. They are, if you're interested, they are gluten-free, grain-free, and even vegan, dairy-free and things. They're made out of nuts and seeds and some maple syrup. So for those that are interested in seeing how we make this video is for you.
And if you're excited for this, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, letting us know that you enjoyed coming into the kitchen with Michelle and I. And if you're new to Michelle and I, we say hi and welcome. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you join our family. You don't miss any video from us. One thing about these biscottis that's so great is Michelle and I have tweaked and adjusted over the years, but in general, it's been the same recipe. We used in the past only would just do like one nut to coconut flakes. Now we like more of adding in a variety of both nuts and seeds to get those health benefits as well, because typically we notice ourselves not really having too many of the other nuts and seeds. So like, oh, we'll just add it into our biscotti to add in more of that blend and variety into it. So that's one thing that's really great about this recipe, is that you can do that. You can add in your favorite nuts and seeds and play around with how much of each one, because you can go by weight with this if you have a food scale, or we will also provide if you give it in the measurements of like 1 cup, 2 cups as well, so you can adjust and have fun with it and play around with it.
Okay, so as Lori said, we use a variety of nuts and seeds, and this is what we do. We just buy bagged nuts and seeds. Now in the past, so I have cashews here, Brazil nuts, almonds, I got pumpkin seeds here, which Lori's kids got into, is why they're in this bag, sunflower seeds, and walnuts. In the past, Lori and I used to soak them and dehydrate them before grinding them into flour, which I'll show you how I do that in a second. Now we skip that step. Now if you still feel called to do that and you have time to do that, go for it, do it. If you do decide to soak them and then rinse them and dehydrate them, they do best dehydrating them before making into flour. Lori and I have tried soaking them and rinsing them and then drying them out in the oven, and it didn't come out at all. So we just find it's best we just don't worry about doing that. We just take them right from the bag, and I grind it up here in the food processor, which I'll show in a second. But the other ingredients, you can get whatever variety of nuts, or just stick to one nut. If you don't have a food processor and so you can't grind this, I want to show you there's an option for that as well. You can get already almond flour like this in stores today. You can get this mostly in most stores anywhere. So you can get almond flour, and then the other ingredient you're going to need is coconut flakes, and this is the kind of coconut flakes Lori and I get. So again, if you don't have a food processor, you can make the biscottis out of this and stir it up in a bowl. So I did want to mention that if you can't grind it up, you can still make this recipe. Other ingredients, if you want to make a chocolate version, you're going to need cocoa powder. So I have that here. And then this is the sugar that I use in my biscotti recipes, along with maple syrup. Now the reason I use this sugar is because I have a history of struggling with candida, and this kind does not feed it. So this is why I use it. Okay, so now that we have our nut flours made, I want to show there's 2 different ways you can go about making the recipe. One, you can continue to add all the ingredients and blend it all together to make the dough.
Our food processor's been through a lot, hanging on. We're like, save it.
And then otherwise, you can also just put all the ingredients in a bowl and stir it up together. This just requires obviously a little bit more elbow grease and stuff than putting it all in there. I also want to mention, we'll give the measurements and stuff, and again, you can mix and match. So we do a mix of nuts, seeds, and coconut flakes, are the 3 main, I guess, flours of the recipe. So depending on if you use more nuts and seeds, it does make the biscottis a little bit more dense. If you want to lighten it, just do more coconut flakes. We tend to do a little bit more nuts and seeds to coconut flakes, but sometimes I make them equal. Literally every time I go to make this, depending on...
It's different. And that's why I find like the beauty in this recipe is that you can do that. But Michelle and I would say my favorites are when they're a little bit more heavier on the nuts and seeds, because they are just more dense, and I do notice that they do satisfy me a little bit longer. Like,
I just wanted to mention that if you don't want something so heavy and dense, you're just going to need to do more coconut flakes than nuts and seeds. But this is also your time where you can find your ratio that fits to you, or you mix it up like Laura and I do.
All right, so let's get to making these.
Okay, so now getting into making the recipe. So first, if you're not using the store-bought almond flour, you're gonna make your own flour using whatever kind of nut or seed combo you want to do, whatever flavor you feel called to. So what I show you is Laura and I just take the bag and we plop it in. And sometimes like I'll mix up two things. So that's Brazil nuts and I'll blend it up with walnuts. So I try to do, one thing that I found best is I like to do a mix of oily nuts, some dried nuts, so almonds are dried out, and then I like to mix in some seeds. Again, just for a variety of flavor and different minerals and nutrition being added into my diet. And then obviously cashews is another great one as well. So I'm just gonna blend them up. So what we do is, like I said in the past, we would soak and dry them. We don't do that step anymore, but if you still feel called, go for it. So now I'm just gonna blend these up and I'll show you guys a little fast forward here as I do all this. It's gonna take some time. Just blending up into flour. Now I'm going to add in the liquid ingredients now that the dry kind of flour is all done. Now you need something to kind of bind it all together. So here I'm going to use maple syrup, and if you, depending on the nut ratio, sometimes if it's too dry and I don't want to add more sugar, I add in some water. And just slowly add in water because I've made it before and it still comes out, just it's more challenging to work with. If you add too much water, it's actually really extremely soft and hard to shape. But anyways, it still works out. So you can, that if you don't want to use a lot of more sugar, you can add water. Just go very slowly with adding this in. Okay, so this is what this first batch, I know the first batch I normally have to add a little bit of water, but the more I make it over time in the blender, the oils from the nuts and the maple syrup stay in it, so I don't have to use as much. But you can see here, it's not quite come together. And so I just want to show you guys kind of what this looks like. It's still kind of flaky, but it's kind of moist and damp. I don't know if you can kind of tell, but see if I squished it together, see how crumbly it is? It wouldn't stay together. Now it would work, it would just require you really compacting it. So I'm just gonna water to see if that does it. Holds it together. You might have to do two, we'll see.
Like a tablespoon.
Sorry, a tablespoon. A tablespoon in there. Just kind of mix it around and we'll see if that's enough. Okay, so now just that one, it seems like that really now came together more. Now when I put my hands to it, it seems a little bit more damp and holds together a little bit more. And see there, that's kind of what you're looking for. You want it to be able to hold together. Okay, so now I dump the dough, onto a cutting board, and you need kind of a nice big cutting board because it makes a long log type of shape is what you're kind of going for.
If you're going the biscotti look.
If you want, I mean, you can scoop this and shape this really to anything and slice it any way you want. Laura and I have also done it. We used a cookie scooper and scooped it on. I just find this does the best, and we like the look of it when we drink it with our coffee because it looks like a biscotti. So a biscotti, you know, traditionally it's just a double base cookie, but here it's no flour. You're using nut and seeds as your flour. And then you just kind of
go with the mindset that it's going to be like a
it's still going to be a dense, crunchy cookie. If you are able to dehydrate this, they do come out. We feel a lot better than the oven, but Laura and I don't have our dehydrators anymore, so we just tend it towards baking. But if you have one, we recommend doing a dehydrator overnight or for even 2 days in the dehydrator. So I'm kind of a perfectionist with this. You don't have to make it look so neat and pretty, but I really try to mold it and shape it. So I'm here for a good bit. But this is the texture you kind of want looking for. See how it's kind of coming together. It's not flaking too much. You will get a little stick to your hand, and like I mentioned before, if you did water and you did too much water, it's just, you can still mold it. It's just really wet and like really it will stick to you. So that's why you want to slowly add it, because I've learned many times the wrong way, we add way too much water too soon. Okay, so as you can see here, I have see how thick it is and stuff. Again, you can adjust this. I don't know, it's about half an inch-ish or so to about 2 or 3 inches wide. Again, this is when it becomes pretty forgiving. You can shape it and do whatever thickness you want. Once I have it kind of molded together, and you kind of want it tightly pressed. You kind of, like I said, you saw me molding it together to be tight, because you don't want it to fall and flake apart. I like to use a serrated knife to cut this. I feel like it works the best with this. Now, cutting it in sizes, again, goes back to your personal preference. You can do lots of little skinny ones. You can do fewer big fat ones, really whatever you want. But this is about the size Laura and I tend to do them at. It's about that, and I'll show you guys over here how I cut it. So then I just kind of cut and slide. And then sometimes when I get to the end, if I feel like it's going to be too thick, I cut the end off, and then sometimes Laura and I just treat ourselves to eat this raw, just as we're making it, or if I'm making more, I'll just add this to the next batch. But that is what they look like, cut up. Okay, like I said, this is a time you can either go put it in a dehydrator to dry, or if you have an oven, just get a baking sheet and just transfer them over. And there you go. Now I have them all on the tray. This is what you're kind of looking for. This is the denseness. And you can see they're kind of together, but they're airy at the same time. Now again, if you did more coconut flakes, it'll be a little bit more crumblier and airier, just so you know. And then they just go in the oven. Okay, so I have one batch in. Now I'm going to go and continue to make more. I'm also going to make a chocolate one, so we'll show overview videos of me doing that here as well. Again, we'll link the recipe over on the show notes. We'll give the link down below to purelytwins.com so you can get the overview of this recipe. But I hope this video has been serving you and seeing how Laura and I make these biscottis, our version of biscottis. But one thing too I want to mention again, if you're using a dehydrator, it could take anywhere from 24 hours up to 48 hours, depending on how light and crispy and dried out you want them. Laura and I, when we do them in the oven, there's been moments when I've done it at a low temperature, like 200 for many hours, or sometimes I'm just in a rush. I do it at a higher temperature, 300, for anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. Sometimes they do get a little bit brown and burnt looking, but I'm totally fine with that. Again, experiment with yourself how long you want them to bake for, and what I mean by that is you have to go by how dried out you want them. Laura and I tend to not go all the way dried out, just kind of crisp them up a little bit. Please keep in mind though, it is especially if you add water, it kind of makes it a living product in a way that you have to be careful that they don't have a long shelf life. Laura and I like to store them in the fridge. That does help preserve them longer. If you're making a lot, you could put some in the freezer and then just pull out kind of what you're going to eat within the next few weeks out in the fridge. Laura and I tend to have just one biscotti a day. I guess I recommend that's kind of like the serving size if you're going for that. But I did want to mention that if you do water and you don't dry them completely, there's still water and moistness in them, so they don't have a long shelf life. Please keep them stored in the fridge. Alright guys, Laura and I continued making more biscottis. I actually have another one here to get into the oven, but I wanted to show you one here. See how it got a little bit toasted and stuff. That's how it's going to be if you do it in the oven. But they're still a little tender. They're still going to come out a little bit delicate. You're going to want them to fully cool on this tray before you remove them, and that can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So I just like to leave them when I go about doing other activities. But this is kind of what they'll look like. Like I said, they're still going to be a little sensitive when they come out. That is it, girls. Thank you again so much for coming into Michelle and I's kitchen today and baking biscottis with us today. We really hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any more videos. So if you follow us over on Instagram now and you see us dipping these little log-looking things, our biscottis, into our coffee, now you know what we're enjoying. We really hope it inspired you to be creative in the kitchen again and using good old classic nuts and seeds. We love you, girls, and we'll chat with you all in the next video.